Hi, this is Jen Rubin, Editor-in-Chief of the Contrarian. We are delighted to welcome Congresswoman Chellie Pingree from the First District of Maine. Welcome, Congresswoman.
Thanks so much for having me. Thrilled to be with you.
We were just chatting about the lovely First District, which is the bottom half of Maine, as it were, and wanted to talk to you. You've been doing a lot of social media, pointing out the impact, potential impact, if this big bad betrayal bill passes on Maine. Talk to us a little bit about some of the main concerns. You've talked a bit about Medicaid, but it's really a whole range of issues. What are you looking at in your district if this should pass?
Oh yeah, and we've had multiple meetings across the district with, everybody from people who are trying to sort this out at the state level to providers and people who are worried about their own lives, what'll happen to their SNAP benefits, what'll happen to their Medicaid. So let's just dig in. I mean, it's the two big issues, of course, and I know you've talked about it a lot, are Medicaid and SNAP benefits. So if you take this much money out of the Medicaid system, I mean, not only do we have 400,000 people in Maine who get Maine Care, as it's called, so Medicaid, but you also have a huge impact on the providers who depend on Medicaid to pay their bills, and then our hospitals. Waterville, Maine just had a hospital close within the last month. So people know firsthand what that means when your hospital closes. And with a lot of rural communities in our state, we've already lost maternity care, or some don't have emergency room care. And these are long drives. So what I say to people is, even if you think you won't be impacted by Medicaid, you're going to have an issue at your hospital. You might have a good provider. You might have insurance, but this hits everybody. It also hits our seniors in nursing homes. I just visited a long-term care facility I guess it was this week. Yeah. And, just talking with everybody there, the people trying to figure out, like, how are we going to make the books balance? And then some of the other things in there, the provider tax, the wonky stuff that's in there is a disaster for our state. You also might know that the dish payments, which are these sort of payments that they give to hospitals that have exceptional problems, they only gave a priority to Texas and Florida. So good luck if you're another state. Okay, if you're the favorite child. Now, I got 3 kids. People always said, don't have a favorite child or a favorite grandchild, but I guess you can if you're this administration or you're the Republican. So anyway, that's a nightmare. Then you got SNAP benefits. We have a tremendous number of people, just under 200,000, who depend on that. And, people, they get these stupid ideas. Oh, these are lazy people who won't go out and work to buy their own food. We know that food prices are high. This is senior citizens, veterans, and a tremendous number of children are under this program. And if we don't give people a healthy start, little kids a healthy start, they're just not going to be in good shape. It also impacts the provision in school lunch that determines if you qualify for free school lunch. We're one of the wonderful states where our legislature decided to have universal free lunch, but this would impact how much money comes back into our state to help pay for that. Okay, now I'm just going to go on one more rant. So
Absolutely.
couple that with all the other horrible things they've been doing to the budget, between the Doge and right now what we're doing in the Appropriations Committee where I sit, and we've had our first week of markups. They're using this horrible logic, and they did it during the Ag Committee markup on the reconciliation part on SNAP benefits. And they say these righteous things like, well, states should have some skin in the game. It's time states paid their fair share. And if you have a high mistake rate, you'll pay more. So those mistake rates are, you made a mistake in the state, you corrected it, and now you're paying it back. I mean, it's not like fraud and abuse, which is what they like to say. But anyway, my state, Maine, would qualify for the 25% payment on the mistake rate. So that means my state has to pay we'd have to cover $100,000 of this normal entitlement program, SNAP, that covers everybody's food. Okay, so that means your state has that extra burden. If you lose the Medicaid funding, you have the extra burden. I work on the Interior and Environment Subcommittee. They're turning a tremendous amount of the EPA funding back to the states. Permitting, things like local sewer and water are going back to the states because they should have some skin in the game. Well, before you know it, all you got is bankrupt states. I mean, our state was already struggling to make the Medicaid payments to providers. It's not enough to keep them going. So anyway, end of rant. But when you look at the whole picture of what they've been doing to Doge, what they're doing in the stupid rescission bill, and then what they're trying to do in the big reconciliation bill, all the crazy big words, we're just screwed. I mean, there's
Yeah.
just no hope for our states. And, if it's bad for Maine, it's really bad for Mississippi and Kansas and everywhere else. Like, I hate these people. It's just awful. Sorry.
One of the things that was extremely informative. One of the things I think you pointed out that I'd like you to kind of dig down a bit is even if you're not on Medicaid, the effects in your community because a hospital closes or because people aren't getting health care and so they don't show up to work, so the economy suffers. Or when you're talking about SNAP programs that you then have, that it impacts farmers, that it impacts the schools. This is a huge hit overall to the state. And because the states are going to be so burdened, if you like roads, if you like local police, the money's got to come from somewhere. So the states are going to either have to raise taxes or cut a lot of the things they do at the local level to pay for this. So I can't think of an area of government that this wouldn't impact.
That's the crazy thing. And I think people haven't begun to understand that because, again, I mean, I can talk to anybody, and at first glance, they'll say, yeah, damn it, that federal government spends too much of my tax dollars and I want my taxes cut, and then you start to say, like, okay, here's how it could impact you. I was telling you earlier, I live in a town of about 420 people. So I grew up living in a small town, or at least since I was a teenager, I've been here. I've been in every local office. I started as tax assessor, school board, all those things. And I like to tell people it was like a microcosm of how government works. Because in a small town, you kind of have a sense of like, oh, if that person doesn't get health care, well, we got to make sure they're taken care of. Well, if that kid isn't doing well in school, they're in my kid's class and we want them all to do well together. And in a way, that's how that is. And every year on the school board, when you were trying to figure out what the school budget should be, how do you give enough? You knew that there would be this whole group of retirees and people on Social Security would say, please don't raise my property taxes. Well, when we were working on one of the issues that DOGE cut, which was a big food payment system that went to farmers, got fresh fruits and vegetables into the school lunch, all of the all of the people who work in food service operations came to see me. And one of the things they said was, hey, if we don't get this funding from the outside, we don't have the extra money to pay for school lunches and to enhance our meals, parents will still want it. And we're going to have to go back to the school board, which will go back to the budget, which will go back to people's property taxes, and bingo, there you are. And that's just one of many things. I mean, when they cut the funding for sewer and water systems under the EPA, states are going to have to pay the burden. They're not going to be able to fund all these upgrades that we need because of flooding and sea level rise and all the problems we're experiencing now. Well, they're going to have to go back to the towns and say, pay for your own clean water, pay for your own sewer system. I mean, it's just one thing after another that will be impacted because these state budgets are usually a reflection of what the state can afford to tax people at or can get out of the revenue. And if they can't do it, then for instance, in our state, states pay 55% of the cost of education, local school boards pay 45. Guess what? Your local school board's back to paying 60% or something. And this horrible climate that we're in where, housing is expensive, people worry about holding onto their home, property values are going up, all those things, people are just saying like, oh my God, I can't pay my bills. So that is true of veterans, people who are on Social Security. And I mean, these are Republican values. Like I'm in a purplish state. I represent a lot of people who really just look at this as kind of like common sense, what's practical, what's going to work for us. And that's what they're doing at every level of all these things they're cutting out. And certainly the giant cuts from Medicaid and SNAP are the biggest bites that states are going to have to take on.
Spoken at all to Senator Collins. She's in the Senate. They actually made the Medicaid cuts worse. Why in the world would a senator who's representing exactly what you described vote for this bill?
I have no idea. Look, I speak to Senator Collins all the time. Our state, there's only 4 of us. We're very close when it comes to sort of the practical issues. And as you know, because of the DOGE and because we've had a target on our back in Maine, we are working every week to get things reinstated. Most of them are the DOGE cuts, these just crazy cuts that go to your university or farmers or, normal funding streams that you have to fight to claw back and then you get them. We do talk about that stuff a lot. And because I'm also on the appropriations committee, I talked to her frankly about the impossible position to be an appropriator in the Senate right now, because you don't have the power, just like we don't have it in the House, even if you're in the majority party. Why either of our senators would ever consider voting for this, I don't know. I know they're getting a ton of pressure in our state. We're about as wound up as a state could be. You go to our protest marches and our town halls, and people are really showing up. Thank you very much, people, for doing that. I think it's been wonderful. But the fact is, I can't imagine. She has been trying to work out this compromise that I think is related to like the dish payment. No, it's about the provider tax, because the Senate is cutting that down to a ridiculously low number, and that's how it's too wonky, but that's how we fund a lot of these Medicaid programs in our states. And I noticed, I haven't talked to her about it, but I've seen that they're doing that in the Senate. So as they always do in the Senate, they try to, find some things. Well, this will make it a little more palatable. This will help this in my state. I mean, it's just a big piece of shit, this bill. There's nothing good about it. And if it gets yes
Totally.
vote, and if it actually passes, there's nothing you can do to make it good enough. So
Exactly.
I will say
Exactly.
generally that the Senate doesn't, they don't care if the House lobbies them, whether it's me or anyone else. Like, so people are always saying to me, like, can you talk to Senator Collins, get her to do this? And I was like, I'll work on that.
Well,
But
the old saying that the enemy is not the people on the other side of the aisle, it's the House if you're in the Senate.
absolutely.
And, people should understand they are doing this to give tax cuts to that very needy, very humble group of billionaires who don't apparently have enough money. So the notion that you would cause this systemic damage for that is kind of boggling. I want to, as we reach the end of our time, talk to you a little bit about the tariffs, because Maine is right next to Canada. And talk to us a little bit about the impact that you're already seeing, both on the Maine side of the border and frankly on the Canadian side of the border, where I know you have communication and you talk to and you interact with businesses and other folks in Canada.
Absolutely. I mean, we hate this idea of the tariffs generally in Maine. And look, I go back to the, protectionist wing. I hated NAFTA. I saw the end of a lot of our manufacturing in our state. It affected our paper industry, much of our manufacturing. Look, it has not been good what we've done in this country over the last 20 years. But to overnight, in this crazy, chaotic way that this president does, try to upset everything and then change them every 15 minutes, it's caused a huge issue with Canada. We have a lot of very integrated industries. Our lobsters, when we produce too many, they process them in Canada and then they bring them back. Oops, now you got a tariff. Our blueberries, we do wild blueberries across the border. Potato, I can go on all night. We have a paper mill that actually sends the slurry across the river and processes it in Maine. So there's no way to fathom how you're going to manage all these things. But the worst thing is, the Canadians think we hate them. We love the Canadians. We border 3 provinces, include, when you include Nova Scotia, and they are our biggest source of tourism. Guess what? Border crossings are way down. People are
Wow.
not choosing to take their vacations in Old Orchard Beach or Algonquin or all the places. Old Orchard, they have the signs in French and in English, because it's such a popular destination. So it's a nightmare. I've been talking to the province leaders up there, and they say, what's going on? We love you, but we're not coming to visit. Our governor just had the New England governors just had a gathering with premiers and prime ministers to just bring everybody together. And, we're doing everything we can, but this is the crazy president. And the talk of the 51st state, I mean, it's just rude. It's just unthinkable. The only good thing about it is the funny jokes that people make. And, mostly in Maine, we just want to join the maritime time zone and we're ready to go with them. So, our be there.
Yes.
Like, enough.
We've all seen those maps of Canada then coming down to pick up parts of the United States. They're going to have some takers pretty soon. Congresswoman, thank you so much. You're just a wealth of information. And if you haven't already seen her, folks, take a look at social media because she's all over there. Thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully this thing will just die in the water, since it's really the big bad betrayal. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.